I always forget how cool the new intro is. It's so exciting. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It is August 3rd, somehow. This is .NET MAUI Community Stand-Up, which we do the first Thursday of every month, except for last month, which we totally skipped because it was the day after a holiday in the US, and we were all really tired. Yes, go Pats. Thank you, Pierce. Hi, chat. We have a very special show today. Mostly because Dave isn't here, so there are no rules. No, I'm just kidding. Dave is here, but he is not on this call because he is busy. So I get it. But I brought two of the coolest people that I work with in an actual office, like once a week when I show up, because they're both based in Boston right now, which is sick. Michael and Emma. Hi, guys. I'm Maddy, by the way.
Hello.
I'm on the Maui team. And I work on a bunch of stuff, including the vscode extension, which we will be talking about in the second half of this show today. So, Michael, Emma, why don't you guys introduce yourself?
Emma, you go first.
Oh.
Okay, sure. So I'm Emma. I joined this team a long time ago. I joined Xamarin, I think, in 2014. And since then I've been working on tooling for VS Mac, now vscode, usually around iOS. I work with Moro on hot restart, per2 Mac, and many other things. So yeah, that's me.
Hey, I'm Michael. I've been with Microsoft for about 10 years, been with the mobile development team since 2019 or so. I work mostly on Hot Reload at this point, the various forms of it in various teams. But I've worked on all sorts of things from, Xamarin Forms tooling in VS Mac and things like that to now DevKit.
I told them I was going to call them the hot guys, but then I realized it's probably inappropriate because they work on hot restart and hot reload. So just know that I want to do that, but I'm not going to. But I called it out anyways. Michael, the Dot Morton wants to know what on earth you have behind you. The giant printer.
This one, wait, cameras are backwards. This one here and that one over there, the yellow one, they're both Delta 3D printers from CME-CNC. There's also a lull spot with a little bit of green on it. And what you can't see are the three other ones that go this way.
Crazy. Yeah, this is.
And there's also one on the floor that isn't put together yet. So I got a problem.
Yeah, just a little bit, but it's fun. Michael just got back from like a 3D printing conference too. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. 3D Rep Rap Festival out in Goshen, Indiana.
Yeah.
Which is where CME-CNC is based. So
sweet. Yeah. And Emma's actually in the office, like working, unlike the rest of us who, just are at home 3D printing. And for me, I'm working, ? On calls all day. So, but I'm here. After this, by the way, shortly after stand-up ends, I will be going to New Hampshire to turn off my phone for 3 days and go camping. So this is the last thing I'm doing. You're all very welcome. I'm very excited. So if this is your first time at a community stand-up, thanks for joining. We always have a good time. Usually my partner in crime, Dave, is here, and he brings some level of sanity that I do not. So it's fun. I do have a freaky robot behind me. It's my R2-D2 that I made in Disney. So the way that this usually works is we go through some of the blogs that came out this month, mostly by the community. Sometimes if there's important stuff like releases, we'll show some of the like Microsoft blogs, which I have a couple today. And then sometimes we'll talk about PRs. Sometimes we'll talk about third-party packages. Maui is open source. So you're always welcome to send us things that you've worked on and contributed to Maui or packages. And we'd love to highlight those things. And then the second half of stand-up is reserved kind of for our special guests of the month, which, this month is Michael and Emma, who both worked on the new .NET MAUI extension for Visual Studio Code, which is amazing. And I love it. And I know people have a ton of questions about it, so we will do our best to answer those. We'll do a little demo, maybe, whatever we can get showing up. The extension is in preview. I have all the links for it. They will all be in, nope, not that. That's the survey link. Our URL list thing. So you can follow along here. Yeah. So let's jump right into it. Share my screen. This is what the URL list looks like. I know the resolution is terrible. It's okay. But this is how you follow along with links. You just click on them. First and foremost, .NET 8 Preview 6 shipped early July. We are getting up there. Preview 6. I think Preview 7 should be coming like any day now in the next couple weeks. And then we're into the RCs. Lots of desktop issues came out as fixes in Preview 6, just FYI. Fonts, nav, tabs, file picker was the big thing. Really what we're doing for .NET 8 MAUI is focus on quality. I almost said community. That too. But yeah, lots of desktop fixes, I think, is really what we're doing. And then, of course, there's also native AOT support, which is very cool. Usually we've had it in Mono. Now we have it in .NET, and it's very fast. So yeah, there will be some really, as Morton put in the chat, there are some good memory fixes in Preview 7 that are coming out. Oh, and yeah, Morton's asking about backporting those to .NET 7. We have like a process for how we choose what to backport. I'll make sure that people hear that. I think that's been in consideration. Also, if you have .NET 8 preview on a Mac now, you can use it on VS Mac, which we did not have the support for up until recently. So just FYI. Cool. When does .NET 8 ship? Well, I know exactly when. It is at November 14th through 16th. It'll be the 14th, which is our .NET Conf. We always do .NET Conf at the same time as the .NET launch. So that is when it is launching. We're very excited. I was asked to give a session. I have no idea what on earth I will be doing for my session. So send your ideas. .NET MAUI is one of the exciting themes. That's us. If you are a community member who would like to do a 30-minute talk, which is really 25 minutes and 5 minutes of Q&A, you are more than welcome to submit through our session eyes. The way that they pick them is like, mostly on diversity of content, right? And time zones. They usually do the second and third day of .NET Conf through the night, which is really cool. But if you don't get picked this time, it's probably just because there was someone else with a similar talk or a different similar time slot. Definitely submit. Very cool. So check that out. Submit. We would love to hear from you. The more MAUI, the better in my mind. Yes, I am a Patriots fan. Thanks, James, for asking. I don't know how anyone could tell. I never should wear sports shirts during this because I out myself as a, I don't know, evil New Englander or whatever. So, okay. It is August. However, that means that the last month was July. That is how months work. And for the second year in a row now, Go for Goldman, Matt, has run this thing called .NET MAUI UI July, which is pretty funny because UI and MAUI stands for UI. So it's .NET Multi-Platform App UI July. I love it. It was a slow month. Honestly, I think like everybody in the world is on vacation or was on vacation for most of July. So I really don't blame you guys. It's fine. I'm not upset. But we did have some really great ones, especially towards the end of the month. We'll just fly through these quickly. Just some of them. You can go and look at the whole list yourself at some point. But yeah, I like this one because it had a bunch of cables in it. And it is actually by Matt. And it's adapted from his book that just came out. Oh, that's the link I forgot to put. Hold on. First, what's this? Is this the new one? Is it this one? One of our favorite, you're all our favorite, but one of our community members, Andrew, just released his new, click on his name. His new MAUI book, MAUI-based book, which is very exciting. So come check that out. Where is it? Maybe it's this one? I don't know. Go follow Andrew Selman on Twitter. He's tweeted about it. So just FYI. And a lot of it's online, so you can read up on it. Anyways, this post by Matt is also adapted from his book. So check that out. It's really about like architecture, like where you should shove things in your code base, which I think is very useful because nobody ever talks about this because people think it's boring, but it is really, really helpful. We also have for mappers, by the way, like there's appending, prepending, like you can put your handler kind of wherever in the stack of drawing the code you want. Most people use append to mapping. So that means the native handler will run first, and then whatever you add goes after it. But there's all other ways to use it. So interesting, good for architecture people. One from Sebastian, I hate Medium because they try to make me pay for it now. Is create a credit card view in .NET MAUI. I love these things. Just basic, like, this is how you make this view. This one cracked me up because he uses regex, by the way, which made me want to cry a little bit. But it's in there, just a little bit. Diners Club regex. So yeah, just a cute little snippet here, FYI. C# UI, of course, those are my Smartman apps. If you don't like XAML, which some of you don't, there are multiple options. One is to write your UI in Blazor and use Blazor Hybrid. The other is just write C# UI. You can do that. There are various C# for markup packages, including the one in the .NET MAUI community toolkit, which a lot of people use. You can also just do like out of the box C#. Some of you may be familiar with Comet, which is not C# UI. It is actually like a different architecture style, even though C# is what you use to create the UI. But if that's something you want, go ahead. My favorite part of this is not needed knowledge of XAML. I think that's funny. And yeah, he just walks you through how to write a basic MAUI UI in C#, which I think is pretty exciting. So, and since Michael has done all this amazing work on .NET Hot Reload, you can hot reload your C# UIs just as well as you can hot reload your XAML UIs. I need to close these or I'm going to lose my place. All right. Last one before we turn into the fun stuff, which is VS Code. Oh, wait. Last one and then one more thing and then the VS Code. This one is about face detection using OpenCV. People seem to forget sometimes that phones are way too powerful. Like there's no need for the amount of power in a phone in our pocket. But you totally can do like heavy duty machine learning stuff or like OpenCV stuff. You can do it in the cloud. You can do it locally. There are all sorts of things, but this is cool. I like when people actually use like machine learning stuff on phones. I think that's nice. So again, just like zaberandguyshow.com. I think that is a good website. It's Samir. If anyone knows Samir, he's awesome. Yeah, so that is that for blogs. There are more in the MAUI UI July thing. Let me send the links again. Links. And there's a ton of YouTube videos. YouTube videos are really hard to show in the community stand-up because to get the gist of them, you have to watch them. And then it would all just be all of us sitting here watching a video together, which is weird. But there's a ton of YouTube videos that have been coming out. So definitely keep an eye out for those too. All right. Before we get into DevKit, I am not Dave, so I am not good at combing through PRs and picking out the fun ones. They mostly all just sound like words to me. What I do want to call out is if you go to our PRs right now and you go to the closed ones, almost all of them, not almost all of them, but a very, very good amount of them are related to testing. And so we have had multiple engineers on the MAUI team focused for like .NET 8. And I think Emma's been helping with other testing stuff. We have some of the folks on the tooling team helping, basically writing like an unbelievably robust test suite for MAUI. Because what we heard from a lot of you folks was you were not happy with regressions, especially in like the preview releases. Sometimes we would change things too quick and there would be a regression or two. And we were running tests, but it wasn't enough to catch a lot of those things. So we have been putting in a ton of work for like regular tests, UI tests. We are building them based on Appium right now. So for those of you wondering about Xamarin UI test, yes, it works with MAUI. We are like trying something new because we're wondering if this might be a better direction for us to move in the future. So that's why we are using Appium as like our driver, but the syntax is very similar to Xamarin UI test. It's all in the MAUI repo. It's all open source. So if this is something that means stuff to you and you care about, you are more than welcome to poke around and give feedback on it. There's a ton of PRs about it. Shane's been doing a lot. Rui's been doing a lot. Scott Banning's been doing a lot. Alon Lipton's been doing some. So definitely those are the names and the handles you'd want to search if you're interested in the testing work we're doing in Maui. But just FYI, so there may not be a ton of feature stuff. There is a lot of testing stuff. And I think that is really good to hear, especially when we're coming into preview 6, preview 7 of .NET 8. Yeah. So very cool. That is that. And now I am going to talk for like 2 more minutes, but about the complete other thing. And then I will turn it over to Michael and Emma, which is, let's start with this one. The .NET MAUI extension for Visual Studio Code. And look, that's me. I like sort of wrote this blog and then I let really important people edit it. So it's not nearly as fun. They took out most of my exclamation points. This was mostly like, we released this, exclamation point. This is the best thing ever, exclamation point. And all of the people were like, that's not helpful. How about you give people info and don't sound like you're screaming at them? And I was like, that's a great point. So thank you to everybody who edited this. This blog took a lot of effort. But there is a .NET MAUI extension in VS Code. It's there. Emma and Michael will show you how to install it and what to get it. It is built on this thing called C# Dev Kit, which is kind of like a solution explorer. And then more, it basically makes VS Code usable for like a traditional Visual Studio project is the way I like to think about it. Like if you open a solution file, VS Code doesn't just throw you like a gross hierarchy of files based on what's on the file system. It kind of brings the Solution Explorer stuff into it and helps set up like debugging. It also has stuff with the integrated integrated VS Code Test Explorer, and it is built on top of the C# extension, which is powered by an open source language server built on Roslyn. So there's a lot of questions and comments and OmniSharp versus LSP. I'm not really going to get into it unless all of you overwhelmingly have that question. There's a lot of media on the internet about it. But basically like C#, the C# extension, open source, free, go use it. It is kind of an evolution of OmniSharp, but the other thing that you want for the MAUI extension is C# Dev Kit, which has that Solution Explorer. It's licensed under the Visual Studio license, which means people of you on Twitter or whatever, X, excuse me, or Threads or Mastodon or whatever, we're like, what is it? I don't have a license. Good news. Visual Studio has a community license. And if you are using this for an open source project or for funsies or for school or for exploring, it is completely free. If you work for a company that makes like less than $1 million a year, then it is completely free. If you have like under 5 people or something, the community terms are very, very generous. I think every time we say license and subscription, people are like, oh, I have to pay for it. No, the community terms are very generous. The reason we had to do this is because we are like shipping proprietary code in VS Code. And so in order to not hemorrhage the Visual Studio business, we wanted to make sure that it was like fair, right? Also, this is not a replacement for Visual Studio in any way. Like Visual Studio developers love Visual Studio because it's awesome, because it has every tool you could ever need. VS Code is the exact opposite. It has nothing, and you add what you want as you go. So just a heads up, that's what the license means. It doesn't mean you have to pay us for it. And also, if you're on the MAUI Standup, you probably are using MAUI and VS, which means you already have a Visual Studio license. So the nice thing about this is that like people who have never used MAUI don't have to install Visual Studio to try it. Blah, 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 blah. Very cool. Anyways, that's my rant on that. Now let's get into the fun, which is that it actually works. First and foremost, it has a page. You can go here to download it, or you can do it in VS Code, which I'm sure Emma or Michael will show where the tab is. And then we also have docs. It is part of the Get Started guide, and we have a new tab for VS Code preview. Please share your feedback on the docs. Setting up VS Code, again, not Visual Studio. VS Code is not something where you click install MAUI and it does everything for you. That is not what it is. So there are a lot more steps here. You have to like install Android yourself. Gasp. Some people love it. I actually kind of like it better now. I used to be like a C and C++ developer, so like I'm like, oh, command line, I can do that again. But yeah, if you have feedback on the docs, let us know. There's a lot of steps, so please follow along. Yeah. All right. I'm going to stop rambling because I could do this all day. Let me turn it over to you guys. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then whichever one of you shares your screen first, I will pop up and you can get started. I'm going to eat my soup.
Sure. I can share my screen. On a Mac.
Oh, you're going to have to quit and come back. All right. We'll vamp.
Okay.
We'll vamp. Come on back in a minute.
Okay.
Classic Mac.
I'll be back.
One of the other things that I should mention, I guess while we're here, that are cool things that we're shipping, DevBox is like out and stuff. Microsoft DevBox, which I'm pretty sure Michael uses for like everything now.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like if you haven't heard of DevBox, let me share the blog link.
Yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 DevBoxes set up right now just for this stuff.
Yeah, it is amazing. So you basically like there's like an image, and you can create an image and like share it with your colleagues and stuff, and you just spin up a DevBox, and it's basically like a really nice VM that's meant for developing. And for Maui, it's really nice because like if you have a new employee starting, instead of having to deal with like getting their laptop, whatever, set up with all of the different things, you can just give them like a Maui enabled DevBox, and all of the dependencies and stuff just like work. So very cool. I was just talking about DevBox. That's how I kill time, which I don't know how much you use DevBox. I know Michael uses it a lot. I use it a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I actually heard that they're gonna like ask some internal employees to like use low powered devices and only use DevBox for a bit to make sure that that works. So that's exciting. I don't know. Cool.
Well, I currently do use a low powered device at home here, so
well, there you go.
Great. That's one of the reasons why I love the DevBox, is because when I'm sitting here at home, I can just remote into that box and start working on DevKit, remote into another box, work on the tooling that I work on normally, or go into a DevBox and work on a customer problem.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. All right, Emma.
Okay, let me try it. And I hope this time works.
You're smart. You're an engineer. You fight with Xcode every time it has an update for months. Oh, yeah. You learned how to share your screen. This is great.
Awesome.
All right. I'm going to pop it up. Here we go.
Okay, perfect. So you can see vscode now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, amazing. So yeah, I have vscode open now, and I'm going to open the extensions tab. I already have the .NET MAUI extension installed, but you can search for it in here. .NET MAUI. And yeah, it will be up there. Once you install it, I'm right now using the pre-release version that we just released, like on Wednesday, I think. Tuesday. Awesome. So yeah, this is the latest version, the pre-release version. Once you install .NET MAUI, if you don't have DevKit and the C# extensions, it will automatically install those two. So once you have it there, you can come to the Explorer, and you will get a new button that says Create .NET project. And as you do so, you can select from different .NET projects. You have .NET MAUI, .NET MAUI Blazor. So I'm going to create a MAUI. Select the folder and the name of the project. And that's it. So I just created my MAUI app. You get a solution, a project. So right now I'm the file explorer in here, but you can see there's a new tab in there that says Solution Explorer that I can open. I'm going to close this, which brings the Solution Explorer, pretty similar to the VS one. In here you have your dependencies node with all your dependencies, NuGet packages, frameworks, and so on. If you have also project dependencies, those will be listed in there. And I can open. Let me go to the walkthrough, the .NET MAUI walkthrough, because it's really good. If you're just starting, you just install this, you get this walkthrough that can help you to set up everything. like connecting to your account, installing .NET. You have different steps to get the workloads installed and so on. So, well, yeah, how to create a MAUI app and then how to build and launch it. So I'm gonna open a CS file. This one, the main page, for instance. And right after I open the CS file, I'm getting this new icon in here, the curly braces icon, which is your new friend, where you can select your startup project and also your debug target, right? By default, on macOS, your debug target is going to be your Mac, so Mac Catalyst. On Windows, it's Windows, and on Linux, it's Android. So in here, if I click in debug target, I can see the list of all debug targets I have available, and I can choose a different one. Like, for instance, let's say I'm gonna build for an iPhone simulator. Then I can put a breakpoint and press F5, and it's gonna ask me about the debugger. You should pick .NET MAUI. And after that starts the build, and soon we are gonna get the app running. One interesting thing about the curly braces menu is you can pin any of these options. I really like pinning like my device so I can see what I have selected right now. And yeah, it's launching the app. Well, the simulator for the first time. So it's gonna take a few more seconds. Oops.
It's just waking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, this does work on Linux for folks who are interested and care.
Yeah, I was about to say, he kind of buried the lead on that one.
Yeah, like it only works with Android because we don't have like a Linux target,
Right.
Just FYI. But it does work. And it works in Windows subsystem for Linux as well, which is exciting. Here we go. That iOS Simi. Good morning.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to start this beforehand or anything, right? The extension starts it for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. So, yep, I have my MAUI app now running in there. And if I click on the button, I can hit my breakpoint.
Expand out your locals.
Oh, good point.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Yep, I can watch different things. Let's can inspect in here the variable count. Can I watch the count? Try again. And click again. Oh, nice. Wow, I got a true in here. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's pretty good. So it works on Windows for Android and Windows. On Mac, it works for Mac OS, iOS, and Android. On Linux, it's just Android right now.
Right.
So just FYI, folks. We don't have remote stuff right now. We are considering it. We're considering a lot of things. So give us your feedback, of course. All of the issues are open source. They're on GitHub. I can actually send that link too. Yeah. So start peppering us with questions, please, so that we can ask them. And they can do fun questions too. It doesn't have to be like, how does this work? It could be like.
So Emma, show them how to file a bug.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Any issues?
So you can come here to the help menu, report an issue, and then you can select an extension and select the .NET MAUI extension in here. And then, yeah, of course, all the details about the problem you are facing.
Yep. And that will make an issue for you on the GitHub. So it's open source. If you have like private stuff you need to send us, open an issue and then just note it and we'll get in touch with you somehow. Yeah. Okay. What about the iOS simulator for Windows? What's the story there right now? kind of a
So that kind of gets bundled into our remote story, right? Because in order to do the iOS simulator on Windows, you need the pair to Mac feature, which we really don't have in this yet, right? Because for this initial version, what we went with and what our core priority was just getting the core F5 scenario working for the platform that you're on. So if you're on Windows, you're going to be able to debug every target that MAUI supports for that platform. So on Windows, we've got the Android emulator that's already available. You can do Windows. You can build for iOS locally on Windows, but you can't debug, right? Because there's no iOS simulator for the Windows platform without having that pair to Mac. Same thing when we go to Mac, right? Now on the Mac, you have your Mac desktop, you have iOS, and you have Android, because we have all the SDKs available on that platform to be able to debug them locally. But you lose Windows, right? Because you can't debug a Windows app on a Mac machine. And then my favorite, obvious to me, is the ability now to develop for Android on Linux, right? So on Linux, the only SDK that we have available that MAUI targets locally for debugging is Android, right? Yeah. So, the F5 scenario for local debugging, right? So anything that has a remote aspect to it or another machine that we've got to involve in, that's a little bit more work that we've got to deal with. And it's like Maddy said, it's something that we're looking into. We're trying to figure out how do we work with this with all the remote options that VS Code already has, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we don't want to just bring whatever Visual Studio does over to the VS Code side when VS Code offers a lot in that area already.
Yeah. Yep. So TLDR, hopefully soon. I also everything smiley face followed up with what about WinUI on Mac, which Michael also talked about. It would be nice to be able to develop anything anywhere. So hopefully one day. Just a reminder, this isn't preview. I don't know I think Emma said that. So whatever. But I'll
It's in preview, and we've got 2 versions out, one in the release channel and one in the pre-release channel.
Yeah, so if you're in VS Code, it has this preview tab on it. It's preview. And then you can just hit this to switch to the pre-release. And then you can also switch back at any point. And when you install this, it'll install everything you need. It'll install C# DevKit, all those things. Just FYI.
All
right. One question about code spaces. Kind of similar to the remote story, right? There's some stuff we can hook into there. Have either of you tried it in a code space? Hypothetically,
absolutely. Months ago. I mean, when we first got this going, it installs in a code space, right?
Cool.
And it will work in a code space up to the point where you want to debug a MAUI app, right? Because you need a target. And that target is what? Now, in code spaces, what sits behind it is actually a Linux container, right? So you end up in this situation, well, I can install the Android SDK, at least in the Android container, so I can be able to at least build against it, right? The problem that you run into then is, how do you set up that code space so that it has access to an emulator that's running, right? And that's where you start tripping over things, right? What we've been successful in doing a couple of times is, in various environments, being able to use either a dev tunnel or some type of port forwarding to bring the request for ADB to connect to the emulator back to a local machine, so that you could connect from your code space to your local machine's emulator or local machine physical device. But we don't have anything currently in the tooling side to make that automatic. That's something you've just got to go through the code spaces documentation, or even DevBox documentation, to figure out how to set that up to get it to work correctly.
Yeah.
And these are the types of things that we're taking a look at and trying to figure out, well, can we do anything to make it easier?
Yeah. Yep. That's a good way to put it. Morton put in the chat too, that's where code spaces fall apart, not being able to debug to everything. Agreed. Yeah. But if you're doing cloud native workloads,
your code space is always Linux backed, right? So it's not even like we have a code space where we can say, yeah, but I want to be on a Windows container, right? So I could then, at least build for Windows and do things like that. We don't have that capability yet in code spaces.
Yeah. Yep. So one of the things we would love to hopefully address in one of the upcoming releases. There's a lot of things to do. All right. Another question. Would either of you like to talk about what the support for XAML is in the extension right now? And if there are any, the question originally, this one is about, what about the XAML designer? We'll come back to that. Let's start with what XAML support is in the extension.
You want to take it, Emma, or do you want me to go?
I let you go. Yeah.
You want me to take it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So our XAML support is, let's just call it minimal, right? So what we have is a language file that identifies what the various elements are and how to identify elements, so that we can do very simple things like syntax highlighting and coloring, right? There's no IntelliSense. That just was not possible for this preview. It is something that we're looking at, but it's not something that we were, really forced or wanted to include into this initial release, right? It's XAML. I mean, if you really need to get the IntelliSense, take your XAML file back into Visual Studio, use the Community Edition if you have to get the IntelliSense out of there for the meantime until we have a better solution. But for now, it's simply just a language file. As you type, it'll give you a list of everything that begins with that, including all of the XAML stuff in there. So you kind of have to know what you're looking for. But it's at least better than just a blank text file that is XML coded. At least it knows a little bit about XAML.
Yeah. So some cool background on this project. We got the green light to start working on this in March. So we have only been working on this for 4 or 5 months. Yep. And it was a very small team because we obviously could not take all the engineers who work on everything and just be like, we're going to work on VS Code now. Originally, C# Dev Kit was going to be just, well, it is. C# Dev Kit itself is just cloud native workloads, right?
Yes.
But we were able to make the argument that MAUI, being a cross-platform workload, should have a cross-platform story with VS Code, which is very exciting. And we think it's going to help grow .NET and MAUI and make it easier to get started with. But then we also were kind of in this frantic scramble where we wanted to get the most minimum thing out the door as soon as possible. Because, if C# Dev Kit came out and the first thing that people were asking was, where's MAUI? We wanted to be able to be like, it's coming, not oh, I don't know. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, a lot of the cuts you see, like the XAML stuff, it's just because we were prioritizing. So one thing that we have been working on, it's still not great. I would definitely recommend trying and filing an issue. But if you do use the Uno extension or the .NET Meteor extension, those do have slightly more XAML IntelliSense than we do. They will at least scope to the control you're trying to type in. So you're welcome to use those alongside. Again, there are some weird conflicts, because they're doing the same thing in some ways that we are, setting up the debug and device stuff. So when you do try that, if you do try that out, if you're interested in trying that out, just let us know what issues you run into. We're trying to fix those. We just could only cover so many scenarios with our testing. But we are also doing the work to make XAML better in VS Code. Part of it is that our XAML language server is very old, and there are 2 people who know how it works, and they both work on our team, and they're incredibly smart, but they also work on a bunch of other stuff. And there's a whole bunch of work to modernize it to LSP. And then there's a whole bunch of other work to actually make that run nicely in VS Code, and make sure that it's up to par with what we would want people to ship. So that's, you have Visual Studio as a fallback, especially while this extension is still in preview. One of the conversations we're having is should we even GA this extension without XAML IntelliSense? Probably not, right? Makes it hard to develop MAUI. But at the same time, we have people who are I just do C# only UI, we saw in that blog, so it doesn't actually matter. So lots of questions we're answering. When it comes to tools like the XAML designer and other tools that Michael works on, such as the live visual tree, the live property explorer, which we don't have for MAUI right now, but we have for the Windows workloads, live preview, those things are not really VS Code things. We do not have a XAML designer for Maui. This is a whole other topic. TLDR, they are a lot of work. They don't work well. We are trying to get you as close to a XAML designer without having to build a drag and drop designer as possible. We hear your feedback. We can talk about this forever on a different stand-up. But when it comes to like the other accessory XAML tools, like those are really Visual Studio tools. They're like custom UI. They're specific for Maui and XAML stuff. One of the really cool things about the VS Code experience is right now, we didn't actually add any UI to VS Code. We only used built-in existing VS Code UI paradigms and APIs. C# DevKit did that too. Like we didn't create anything in VS Code. We didn't want to make it feel like we're trying to shove Visual Studio into Visual Studio Code because it's a very different developer base. So that's why you're not going to see things like the live visual tree pop up. Now, VS Code extensions are very easy to develop. Just FYI. I can tell you that because these two, who have been working on Visual Studio for their entire careers, were able to spin up this extension in like 3 months total. And then we had to do all the work to like make it compliant before we could ship it. But just FYI. So if you are interested in building like live visual tree for Maui in VS Code, go ahead. Have a blast. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I also keep saying I'm going to make something so that all the XAML files, instead of like an icon that's like whatever the VS Code icon is, I'm going to make them all like fire emojis or something. But I haven't done that. So one thing we are...
Wait, before we move on, I want to correct just one small thing. It wasn't just the two of us.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
It was a team. We had, what, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 other people on the team, you know, starting, like I started in April. I know Emma, you picked up a couple months after that. But yeah, so, you know, 5 to 7 of us working for the last 4 or 5 months getting this together so that we can get it out the door.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Very exciting. While also doing like the regular work stuff you have to do. Like Apple shipped an Xcode beta, which means Emma and Mauro and Tondot, who also worked a lot on this, had to like do that. And Michael owns like the .NET Hot Reload stuff across all the teams. So he has to deal with that. And then they have me in their ear like blah, blah, blah. Which is very exciting. And I think it turned out pretty good. And John Dick helped a lot. A lot of you know John Dick, the lead for the Maui team. So he's been instrumental. Where we started actually was we folks who had been involved with when we first shipped Comet and the Comet extension in VS Code. That was kind of our original starting point. This is very different than Comet now. Like the UI is different. The interactions are different. The way we do debugging is different. But that was a really, really helpful thing for us when we got started. Yeah. So there's a lot. Alan, thank you. Alan gave us some early feedback on this too. I literally emailed him an extension file. I was like, install this. Let me know what you think. And he gave great feedback. So thank you. Yeah, it has been quite the journey, but a little frantic. But yeah, we had an amazing team and lots of different expertise that came together for it, which is also cool. So, all right. Let me see if I missed any questions right now. Otherwise, I'll ask you my silly questions.
Maybe something else we can mention, not related to XAML, but to the C# editor is another limitation. Like the editor IntelliSense is gonna work for the first target framework that's listed in the project. Yes. And there is no way to, there is no menu or option to change that. So if you wanna use a different one, you need to change the order of the target frameworks. That's sort of the workaround for now until we work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to call out. So basically, like the editor only will show. It's for many folks who only write the cross-platform stuff. That's great. For people who do like libraries or write really specific platform-specific stuff, if you're only seeing like the Android IntelliSense autocomplete stuff, just put iOS as the first thing in your TFMs, and that will show you iOS. We are fixing that. It's just there's like 4 different teams that have to do like very small things to make that all work. And then we don't have to like do the handshake with each other. So we're getting there. All right. It's in preview. I'm going to keep saying that.
Yesterday when I was working on a customer issue and their code worked for Android, didn't work for iOS, but it was shared code, right? So, you know, there was some stuff that was missing as far as some registrations or something like that. So it was just wasn't working. It was only showing me Android IntelliSense in the editor. And until I realized that, but the build would fail, right? So I was like, there's nothing wrong here. It looks great.
Yeah.
So I had to go into the project file, move Android off as the first one, put iOS as the first one in the list of target frameworks, and then, load up the file again. And now I see the error.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. That sounds about right. Okay, a couple questions also just popped in. That's exciting. Will Maui get web support? Web as a backend? Currently, no. I would love that at some point. Good question. I don't really get to control that. So if I did, we'd have it. It's really a prioritization thing. But
so at web support, I mean, are you talking about the extension being available in VS Code for web? Or because that's a slightly different question, but
I didn't read it like that, but that goes back to the code spaces thing, if so, right? Like, there's nowhere to target the debugging unless you remote it locally, which you can do. It's just not fun.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, too, there's two versions of VS Code for the browser. There's one that's just the web-based one, and then there's one that's in code spaces. The one that's in code space is a little bit more fully fledged, and our extension will install in a code space VS Code instance, right? Our extension and also the C# dev kit one won't install in VS Code for web, right? Because we have stuff that runs in the background that's C# stuff that works in a code space but does not work in just a standard web browser editor. So, yeah.
All right.
It gets crazy once you get to that smart part. So, I mean, really, we support the desktop versions of VS Code, fully, and then somewhat the code spaces.
Yeah. We'll probably get there at some point. I don't know when.
Yeah, it's figuring out what are the use cases. Is there any real use for Maui in just a web browser editor?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. Oh, my favorite question popped up too. Does VS Code mean that Microsoft is moving away from Visual Studio or VS for Mac? No. Thank you for asking, because I can never say this clearly enough. We are not in any way moving away from VS Mac, IDE stuff. Like, IDEs have their place in this planet, right? A lot of people, we've talked to a lot of customers. It is basically like do you like coffee or tea, right? Like, you can like both. You can like one and hate the other. You can have mostly one, but occasionally go for something else, right? Like, it's totally up to you. We love Visual Studio. Visual Studio is something that we have like contracts with customers that they pay us. They get support. If you file a bug, if that paying customer files a bug, they get like different levels of support, right? Like, Visual Studio is a big business. And like I was saying earlier, like, Visual Studio is something that gives you everything you need. You click Maui, it installs it all. You have all of the tools you could possibly need. VS Code is the exact opposite. Like, it's super lightweight. It comes with basically nothing, and you install what you want as you want it. It also supports more than just .NET. So a lot of people use Visual Studio Code for Python development, JavaScript development, all those things. And then now you can also do your .NET and your Maui alongside that if you so choose. A lot of the reason the Maui team decided to do VS Code and really wanted to was just because it is like more, I don't know. I don't want to say well-known because I don't think that's true. But a lot of people in college will graduate college with like JavaScript knowledge, right? And then they'll go work at an enterprise company that uses .NET. And they have to do this like big cognitive shift from VS Code and JavaScript to .NET and Visual Studio. And that can make it really, really hard to get started because not only are you changing the language, but you're changing the entire tooling and your entire workflow. So by adding some level of like .NET support in VS Code, even though it's not a ton, it's never going to be what Visual Studio is. We're making it easy for those people to start with VS Code and .NET and get their feet wet with .NET and get to know it. And then when they're kind of ready, they grow up into Visual Studio. That's one of the many reasons. That's the way I like to think about it the most. Like, I think that VS is like the final destination and VS Code is how you kind of get started. I also just hope it makes it easier for people who are VS Code developers and don't want to install 20 gigs of VS to add the Maui extension and try out Maui and be like, hey, this is cool. I like this. Yeah. So no, VS is not going away. Like, this is not changing our investment in any way, yeah, we still have plenty of folks working on Visual Studio all the time. Any update on Linux support? That's more of an SDK question. I don't really have control over it. Again, like, there's a lot of experiments out there for Linux support, but no updates, nothing in .NET 8. I would keep an eye and send your feedback. Maybe we can get it into .NET 9, but I don't know. The team has already got a lot going on. So I'm not going to promise them that they'll do work. Tailwind and IntelliSense support in VS. Good question. I don't think we have it. So good question. File a suggestion is my suggestion. Everything asks, again, what's the future for VS for Mac? Are we going to see a revolutionary version of Visual Studio for Windows and Mac soon? So the future for VS Mac, what we're really doing in VS Mac right now is quality and stability work. So like just focusing on making sure that it's very stable. We did a lot of under the hood rewrites about like a year and a half, 2 years ago. We changed it to run entirely on .NET. We rewrote the whole UI. But while we were doing that, we broke a bunch of stuff. And so now we're kind of scaling back on feature work to focus on the stability part. And then, we'll ramp back up wherever it takes us. And are we going to see a new version of VS for Windows soon? I don't think so. Like, there's so much stuff in Visual Studio. A lot of people ask, like, why haven't they rewritten VS and Maui? Because it's a lot of work. That's why. Like, do you know how long it takes to write Visual Studio? It's 20 years old. So I don't see us throwing away that code base anytime soon and like doing something totally new. But who knows? I'm like,
anyone who lived through the rewrite for Visual Studio from C++ to WPF is not looking forward to another rewrite of the UI into Maui.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that is also totally out of our control. Like,
yeah,
that's a big ask. I mean, just getting it to run on 64-bit was like years of work. Yeah. So will VS Code replace VS for Mac? Lots of VS Mac questions. No, because it's not an IDE. It's a different thing. But I do have some customers that like we've talked to who are like, oh yeah, I've just been using the VS Code extension and I don't need VS Mac anymore. Because on VS Mac, or on Mac particularly, you have to have Xcode like Apple makes you. And Xcode has a lot of the tools that you'd want in an IDE, like the plist editor and all that junk. So if you're doing like iOS and macOS development, you already kind of have that IDE. Android's a little bit different, but Android is always a little bit different because of who they are. So yeah. All right. Parting thoughts, Michael and Emma. I'm going to ask you the question I've been meaning to ask, which I think is a stupid question, but I love it. And then we'll wrap up. What was the hardest part of developing a Visual Studio Code extension, especially coming from working in Visual Studio forever?
Okay, I'm going to go first because I have my answer already. And there's something I was actually going to bring up earlier, so I'm glad you asked this question. In the initial days of me joining this team and starting to talk to Maddy, we were in the office one day and we're like, okay, so what is it that we want in the extension, right? And in the office, we have full walls, 8 foot, well, actually, they're probably 12 foot tall, that are just whiteboards, right? We filled 8 feet by 12 feet of stuff that we wanted to put into this extension on the whiteboard. It's still there right now. It's right off to the left of my desk. And we put one line item off of that whiteboard into this extension, cutting everything else that we could dream up of what we wanted to put into this extension, and just saying, we've got to wait to put that in and just focus on this one thing.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing about building this extension.
Yeah, we had about 8 bajillion ideas. And it's not often that when you work in an org like .NET and Visual Studio, you build something from the ground up. Like, usually there's something you're building into VS. You're building a new feature in .NET. And so we were just like, here's a canvas, go nuts. And we were like, yeah, let's do everything. And then it was like, no, you cannot do everything. So that's tough. Emma?
For me, it's been mostly the idioms or how things are different. differently done in VS and VS Code, and not trying to mimic VS in VS Code. I think that's mostly in the hardest part after working so many years on VS. Not trying to make VS Code look like VS it's been tough. And I think it's gonna be also challenging for people who's jumping from VS to VS Code, trying it for the very first time. If you haven't been working or using VS Code for anything else, it's gonna be weird at the beginning. It's like shocking, but yeah, once you start using it, it's really nice.
Yeah, we did a bunch of like internal testing days, and people were like, "How do I install Maui like without VS?" And we were like, "Ooh, this is gonna be fun." Yeah, I'm surprised neither of you said JavaScript as like just the whole thing, but that's pretty good.
I did Java for 4+ years in Microsoft, so JavaScript is and I was a web developer before I joined Microsoft, so JavaScript isn't an issue for me, or TypeScript for that matter.
Yeah, we use TypeScript mostly, but
yeah,
JavaScript terrifies me every time I try to like go through the code. Nope, just nope. So, anyways, I'm gonna send the links one more time so that you guys can all poke through everything. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Michael and Emma, for hopping on and talking and kind of answering questions and doing a quick demo and all that stuff. And of course, for all of your work and everybody else's work on this extension, because it is awesome. Definitely, all you folks, like, share feedback. Let us know what else you want. You know, we talked a little bit about remote, better support for code spaces, XAML. Let us know what else is missing. And we'll make sure that we put it on our giant whiteboard and we start to pick things off that list. So on that note, happy August. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Northern Hemisphere summer. And if it's the Southern Hemisphere, I hope it is a mild rest of your winter. So thanks. And we will see you in a month. Bye.
Bye. Happy coding.